"Where is Sergeant Major Caldwell?" General Andrew Whitmore did not raise his voice. He did not need to. The words stopped every movement inside room 417. A heart monitor continued its measured electronic pulse. Cold air whispered through the ceiling vent. Somewhere beyond the half-open door, rubber wheels squeaked against polished tile. But no one in the room moved. Whitmore stood beneath the fluorescent lights in a four-star United States Army uniform. His silver hair was cut close. His shoulders remained square despite the years. Beside him stood Lieutenant General Robert Hale and Major General Michael Bennett, both wearing the same dark expression. The three men had left a military leadership conference in the middle of a nationally televised address. They had crossed the city in 3 government vehicles. They had come for one man. That man was not in the bed. An elderly patient lay beneath a clean white blanket, surrounded by flowers, expensive luggage, and 2 confused relatives wearing visitor badges. Daniel Mercer, the hospital operations administrator, adjusted his tie. "General Whitmore," he began, "there may have been a change in room assignment." Whitmore turned toward him. "A change?" The word held no anger. That made it heavier. Charge nurse Rebecca Sloan looked down at the tablet pressed against her uniform. Her thumb moved across the screen. "Thomas Edward Caldwell, 81 years old. Cardiac observation. Room 417 assigned at 9:12 that morning. Room reassigned at 2:06 that afternoon. Current location, temporary monitored overflow." Lieutenant General Hale stepped closer. "Where is the overflow area?" Rebecca did not answer. A steady beeping drifted through the doorway. Major General Bennett turned toward the sound. For 1 second, the face of a senior officer disappeared. In its place was the face of a frightened young lieutenant who had once heard a calm voice tell him to keep his eyes open. Whitmore walked past Mercer and opened the door fully. 40 feet down the corridor, beside a linen station and a parked supply cart, an old man lay alone on a narrow hospital bed. A clear oxygen line curved beneath his nose. One weathered hand rested on a faded canvas bag. The other held a cracked picture frame against his chest. 3 generals stepped into the hallway. Conversations died as people noticed the stars on their shoulders. Caldwell did not look up. He was staring through the broken glass at 4 young soldiers beneath a desert sky. 47 minutes earlier, Mercy Ridge Medical Center had decided Thomas Caldwell was the least important man on the floor. He had been sitting upright in room 417 when Emily Carter entered with a blood pressure cuff and a paper cup of water. The late afternoon sun had narrowed to a pale strip against the window. The room smelled of disinfectant, warm plastic, and coffee left too long on a cart. "How are you feeling, Mr. Caldwell?" Emily asked, like an old truck looking for a quiet garage. His voice was low and rough. The corner of his mouth lifted just enough to show that he knew the line was better than the truth. Emily smiled and wrapped the cuff around his arm. Caldwell was 81, but age had not softened everything. His shoulders were narrow beneath the hospital gown, yet he still sat with the posture of a man who had spent decades being watched by younger soldiers. His white hair had been combed back with water. His hands were marked by pale scars, sun damage, and veins that stood beneath the skin like old river lines. The cuff tightened. He did not complain. He watched the monitor as if it were an instrument panel. "Your rhythm is steadier," Emily said. "The physician wants to keep you overnight. Then this is home until breakfast." He had become lightheaded at a grocery store that morning. A cashier had called an ambulance after Caldwell gripped the counter and quietly lowered himself to one knee. He had apologized twice for delaying the checkout line. No family had rushed into the emergency department. No one had demanded updates. No flowers had arrived. His chart contained the information the hospital needed. Retired. Lives alone. Standard insurance. No confirmed emergency contact. Army veteran. Nothing in the chart explained why he still woke before sunrise. Nothing mentioned the men who continued to call him Sergeant Major. At the foot of the bed sat a faded olive canvas bag. The seams had been repaired by hand, and one brass buckle had been replaced with a piece of dark cord. Emily pointed toward it. "Would you like me to place that in the cabinet?" Caldwell looked at the bag immediately. "No, ma'am. Leave it where I can see it, please." The answer was courteous, but firm. Emily did not ask again. Inside the bag were a clean shirt, a shaving kit, a small leather Bible, and a wooden picture frame worn smooth at the corners. The photograph showed 4 soldiers standing beneath a washed-out desert sky. Dust covered their uniforms. Their faces were exhausted. All four were smiling with the stunned relief of men who had reached the other side of something they had not expected to survive. A younger Caldwell stood behind the other three. One hand rested on the shoulder of the youngest officer. Emily studied the photograph. Your unit. Something like that. Are you still in touch with them? Caldwell looked at the three younger faces. Not as often as we should be. Before Emily could ask another question, Daniel Mercer appeared in the doorway with Rebecca Sloan beside him. Mercer wore a dark suit, polished shoes, and the expression of a man already late for his next problem. He looked at Caldwell, then at the monitor, then at the private room. This patient is stable, he asked. Rebecca checked the chart. Stable at the moment. He is still under cardiac observation. Mercer tapped his tablet. Good. We need the room. Emily thought she had misunderstood. Mr. Caldwell is assigned here. The father of one of our board members is being admitted from the emergency department, Mercer said. The family was promised a private room on this floor. Was that a medical promise? Mercer finally looked at her. It was an institutional commitment. Emily glanced at Rebecca. Rebecca's jaw tightened. The physician approved a temporary move as long as he remains on telemetry. We have a monitored overflow bay near the nurse's station. You mean the hallway beside the linen station? It is temporary. Emily looked toward Caldwell. He had not interrupted. His gaze remained on the photograph. Mercer scrolled through the chart. No family present. No special accommodation request. Standard coverage. Clinically stable. This creates the least disruption. He spoke as if he were rearranging equipment. Emily felt heat rise beneath her collar. He is a patient, not a disruption calculation. Mercer's expression hardened. Nurse Carter, this is an operations decision. The incoming patient is also elderly, and his family has significant concerns. Concerns or influence? Rebecca spoke before Mercer could respond. That is enough. The monitor gave another calm tone. Caldwell reached for his water. His hand paused when he saw Emily's face. Do not trouble yourself, nurse, he said. I have slept in worse places. There was no bitterness in his voice. That made the sentence land harder. Mercer glanced toward the hallway as two transport attendants approached with a portable monitor. We need to move quickly, he said. The board member is already downstairs. The attendants began disconnecting cables and transferring leads. They were not cruel. They were simply moving at the speed the system demanded. One placed Caldwell's shirt, Bible, and shaving kit inside a clear belongings bag. The other reached for the canvas bag. Caldwell's hand closed around the strap. That stays with me. The attendant released it. Of course, sir. Emily attached the portable monitor herself and checked each lead twice. You may feel a bump at the doorway, she said. Caldwell nodded. Mercer was already speaking into his telephone about visitor access, flowers, and parking validation. Rebecca pulled the privacy curtain aside. Beyond it, the corridor was bright, crowded, and exposed. Nurses moved between medication carts. Visitors stood near elevator doors. A supply cart blocked part of the wall beside the linen station. Caldwell looked once around room 417. His gaze stopped on the padded chair beside the window. Will the next patient need that chair? Emily swallowed. Yes, sir. Then leave it. The attendants released the brakes. The bed rolled toward the door. As it crossed the threshold, the canvas bag shifted near Caldwell's feet. The wooden frame slid toward the edge. Emily saw it too late. The frame struck the polished floor with a sharp crack. The sound cut through the hallway noise. One attendant stopped. The other moved another step before the monitor cable pulled tight. Careful, Emily said. The frame lay face down beneath the fluorescent light. A thin line had split the glass from one corner to the other. Mercer glanced back from halfway down the corridor. He saw a fallen object, not a history. Please keep the passage clear, he said, then continued toward the elevators. Rebecca checked the time. Pick it up and move the bed. The new admission is coming. Emily bent down. Caldwell moved first. His weathered hand reached over the rail, slow but urgent. The picture. It was the first time Emily had heard fear in his voice. She lifted the frame carefully. Through the fractured glass, the four soldiers remained beneath their desert sky. A white crack now ran directly across their bodies. One attendant looked at it. We can replace the frame. Caldwell raised his eyes. The frame is not the part that matters. The ceiling lights reflected along the broken glass. For Caldwell, the hospital disappeared. The squeak of rubber wheels became the groan of damaged metal settling into sand. The cold air became desert heat. The beeping monitor became a radio call repeating through static. He was 46 years old again, kneeling beside an overturned command vehicle during the winter of 1991. Smoke moved low across the ground. Someone was shouting for the remaining convoy to withdraw. Inside the damaged vehicle were 3 young officers. One had a shoulder injury. Another was disoriented. The youngest was trapped behind a twisted panel, his breathing short and fast. Caldwell had heard the withdrawal order. He had understood it. Then he looked through a fractured windshield and saw 3 men waiting for someone to decide whether they still mattered. The youngest officer saw him. "Sergeant Major," he called. "Are they leaving us?" Caldwell pushed his gloves against the hot metal. "Not while I am here." The memory jumped. A hand gripping his sleeve. Dust against his teeth. A young lieutenant fighting to stay conscious. Caldwell leaning close enough to be heard. "Names later. Breathe now." Then the desert vanished. Cold hospital air touched his face. Emily stood beside the bed, holding the broken frame against her uniform. People walked within a few feet of Caldwell without looking at him. Rebecca opened a portable curtain around one side of the overflow bay. The other side remained visible to staff, visitors, and anyone passing toward the elevators. Emily placed the photograph inside a clear protective sleeve. "I am sorry," she said. "I will report the damage." Caldwell reached for it. "The frame does not matter." His thumb rested over the 3 younger faces. "They do." Emily turned the frame over to check for loose glass. 3 names were written across the faded cardboard backing. Andrew Whitmore, Robert Hale, Michael Bennett. Beneath the names was a date from 1991. Below the date, in handwriting faded by 35 years, was a single sentence. "To Sergeant Caldwell, the man who made sure we grew old." Emily read it twice. Then she looked through the cracked glass. One face seemed familiar. The jaw in the photograph was younger. The hair was darker. The uniform belonged to another era. But the eyes were the same. Emily turned toward the television above the nurse's station. The sound was muted, but the screen showed a military leadership conference taking place downtown. A 4-star general stood at a podium beneath blue banners. The caption identified him as General Andrew Whitmore. Behind him sat Lieutenant General Robert Hale. Major General Michael Bennett was visible at the edge of the stage. Emily looked at the photograph again. All 3 young officers were now generals. "Mr. Caldwell," she said carefully, "are these the men I think they are?" Caldwell studied her face. "They were lieutenants when I knew them. General Whitmore is in the city today." "So I heard." "Do they know you are here?" Caldwell looked down at the photograph. "No reason they should. You saved them." He did not answer. Emily lowered her voice. "They wrote that you made sure they grew old." A tired smile appeared. "They did the growing themselves." Rebecca pulled the curtain aside. "Nurse Carter, room 421 needs medication. Why are you still here?" His personal property was damaged during the transfer. "Secure it and file the report later." Rebecca looked at Caldwell, then at the exposed space around him. For a moment, discomfort moved across her face. Then the pressure of the floor returned. "We will move you when another room opens," she said. Caldwell nodded. Rebecca walked away. Emily tucked the protected photograph beside the canvas bag and adjusted the curtain as far as it would reach. "You do not have to fight every hill," Caldwell said. Emily looked at the old man beneath the white hospital blanket. "Some hills matter." She returned to the nurse's station and opened the hospital directory. Under Veteran and Military Services, she found the number for the Regional Liaison Office. She hesitated only once. Then she called. A man answered on the 3rd ring. "Veteran and Military Services. Paul Ramsey speaking. My name is Emily Carter. I am a nurse at Mercy Ridge Medical Center. I need help confirming the identity of a patient." "What is the patient's name?" "Thomas Edward Caldwell." The line went quiet. "Did you say Thomas Caldwell?" "Yes. 81 years old. Retired Army." "What rank?" Emily checked the chart. The military information listed only veteran status. From behind the curtain, Caldwell's voice carried across the nurse's station. "Command Sergeant Major." Emily repeated it. "Command Sergeant Major Thomas Caldwell." Ramsey inhaled slowly. "Confirm his date of birth." She read it from the chart. Keyboard keys clicked on the other end. Then they stopped. "I have him," Ramsey said. His voice had changed. "What do you have?" "A service record, multiple command references, and a note directing military liaisons to notify General Whitmore's office in the event of a medical emergency." Emily looked toward Caldwell. He was alone behind the narrow curtain, one hand resting on the photograph. Is he safe? Ramsey asked. He is stable, but he was removed from his private room and placed in a monitored hallway bay. Placed where? Beside the linen station. The silence that followed was different. Not confusion. Disbelief. Do not move him again unless his physician requires it, Ramsey said. I am contacting the general's aide. I do not want to create a scene. Nurse Carter, the scene already happened. You are trying to correct it. The call moved quickly after that. Ramsey contacted base operations. Base operations reached Major Allison Grant, General Whitmore's aide. Emily repeated Caldwell's name once more. Major Grant interrupted. Say the rank again. Command Sergeant Major. Hold the line. At the conference center, General Whitmore sat beside Hale and Bennett while a speaker discussed the future of military leadership. Major Grant approached from behind the stage and leaned toward him. Sir, there is an urgent call from Mercy Ridge Medical Center. Whitmore kept his eyes on the speaker. About what? A patient named Thomas Caldwell. His head lifted. Hale noticed first. Bennett turned next. Major Grant lowered her voice. He is under cardiac observation. Hospital staff reassigned his room and placed him in a hallway overflow bay. He is alone. Whitmore's hand tightened around the pen he was holding. He looked at Hale. Hale looked at Bennett. 35 years disappeared in one breath. Whitmore removed his glasses. Where is he? 3 miles from here. He stood. Hale and Bennett rose before anyone issued an order. The speaker at the podium stopped mid-sentence as 3 generals walked from the stage. Back at Mercy Ridge, Major Grant returned to the telephone. Nurse Carter, keep Sergeant Major Caldwell comfortable. Emily watched Rebecca moving toward her from the medication room. Major Grant spoke one final sentence. All 3 of them are coming. Rebecca reached the desk as Emily placed the receiver down. Who authorized you to contact the military? No one. Rebecca stared at her. Hospital communications just asked whether we are expecting a military delegation. Daniel Mercer appeared behind her. What delegation? Emily looked toward the linen station. General Andrew Whitmore, Lieutenant General Robert Hale, and Major General Michael Bennett. Mercer gave a short laugh that contained no humor. 3 generals are coming here. Yes. To see him? Yes. Why? Emily held his gaze. Because they know who he is. Mercer turned toward the hallway. Caldwell was barely visible behind the curtain. The portable monitor continued its steady rhythm. The cracked photograph rested against his chest. Mercer opened the chart as if the truth might appear between the insurance information and the observation notes. It says retired Army. The chart does not say everything. Rebecca remembered the photograph. She remembered Caldwell asking only that his bag remain close. She remembered him saying he had slept in worse places. We need to move him back, she said. Room 417 is occupied, Mercer replied. Then find another room. There are no private rooms. Then create one. Staff began clearing equipment and searching for space. Caldwell noticed immediately. Rebecca approached with a professional smile that did not reach her eyes. Mr. Caldwell, another room may become available. That is kind of you. But you do not need to rearrange the floor on my account. It would be better for your care. Caldwell looked past her toward Emily. Did you make a telephone call? Yes, sir. You should not have troubled those men. They did not sound troubled. A faint smile touched his face. They always were stubborn. Outside the hospital, 3 black government vehicles turned beneath the emergency entrance canopy. Whitmore sat in the first vehicle with Hale beside him. Bennett followed behind. For most of the drive, no one spoke. They did not need to. Each man remembered the same desert wind, the same damaged vehicle, the same calm voice. Whitmore finally broke the silence. He never asked us for anything. Hale looked through the windshield. Not once. And now he is alone in a hallway. The vehicle stopped. Whitmore opened the door before the driver could reach it. Inside the lobby, conversations softened as the 3 generals entered. Security officers straightened. Hospital staff turned toward the stars on their uniforms. Mercer hurried from the elevators. General Whitmore, welcome to Mercy Ridge. I am Daniel Mercer, Hospital Operations Administrator. We are preparing appropriate accommodations for Mr. Caldwell. Whitmore did not slow. Where was he when you learned we were coming? Mercer's mouth opened. No answer came. Whitmore pressed the elevator button himself. Take us to him. The doors opened. 3 generals stepped inside. The elevator climbed in silence. Mercer stood beside the control panel, watching the numbers change. No one asked for an explanation. The quiet hum of the cables filled the space where excuses might have gone. When the doors opened on the fourth floor, Rebecca waited beside the nurse's station. "General Whitmore, we are arranging a private room now." Whitmore looked past her. "Room 417. Rebecca hesitated. Mercer answered. "This way, sir." Their footsteps moved down the corridor. Nurses paused beside carts. Visitors lowered their voices. A physician stepped aside. Mercer opened room 417. An elderly man rested beneath a clean blanket. Flowers stood on the windowsill. A leather travel bag occupied the chair. His daughter sat beside him holding a cup of water. She looked up in confusion. Whitmore studied the patient. Then the name card beside the bed. His expression became still. "Where is Sergeant Major Caldwell?" Mercer tried to speak. There was a temporary reassignment based on clinical stability and capacity. Whitmore turned toward him. "Where is he?" The patient's daughter looked from Mercer to the generals. "My father did not ask anyone to remove another patient," she said quietly. No one answered her. From the hallway came the soft electronic tone of a portable monitor. Bennett recognized the rhythm first. He stepped through the doorway. Hale followed. Whitmore came last. Emily stood beside the linen station with one hand on Caldwell's bed rail. The old man lay beneath the fluorescent lights, his canvas bag at his feet, and the broken photograph held against his chest. A supply cart stood less than 3 feet away. Caldwell saw Emily's expression and slowly turned his head. For a moment, the years disappeared. Whitmore saw the soldier who had refused to leave 3 young officers behind. Hale remembered Caldwell pushing him through a narrow opening while metal burned through both gloves. Bennett heard the voice that had kept him conscious. Names later. Breathe now. The generals stopped at the foot of the bed. Their shoulders squared. 3 right hands rose together. The salute was precise. Not ceremonial. Personal. The entire hallway went silent. Caldwell looked at the stars on their uniforms. Then at the older faces beneath them. His eyes softened. With the oxygen line beneath his nose and the cracked photograph against his chest, he raised a trembling hand and returned the salute. Whitmore did not lower his hand until Caldwell did. "Sergeant Major," he said, his voice carrying through the corridor, "we came to thank the man who gave us every year after 1991. Caldwell looked from Whitmore to Hale and Bennett. A faint smile crossed his face. "Took you boys long enough." Bennett laughed once, but the sound broke in his throat. Hale looked down. Whitmore stepped beside the bed. "What happened to the photograph?" Emily answered. "It fell when Mr. Caldwell was moved into the hallway." Whitmore lifted the frame carefully. He read the words on the back. "The man who made sure we grew old." Then he turned toward the people gathered in the corridor. "For those who do not know this man, his name is Command Sergeant Major Thomas Caldwell." No one moved. In 1991, 3 young officers were trapped inside a damaged command vehicle. The convoy had been ordered to withdraw. Sergeant Major Caldwell heard the order. Whitmore looked down at Caldwell. He went back anyway. Hale spoke next. "He pulled me through an opening barely wide enough for a man." Bennett's voice was quieter. "He stayed with me when I could not breathe. I asked whether we had been forgotten." Bennett swallowed. He said, "Not while I am here." Whitmore held up the cracked photograph. "The 3 officers in this picture are standing before you. Everything we did after that day, every soldier we commanded, every family we returned home to, every year we were given, began with this man refusing to leave us behind." He turned toward Mercer. "Today, someone decided he was the easiest person to leave behind." Mercer lowered his eyes. Whitmore did not shout. He did not threaten. "Bring his physician. Bring the hospital chief executive officer. And bring 3 chairs." He placed one hand over Caldwell's weathered fingers. "We are not leaving him alone again." Within 10 minutes, 3 chairs stood beside the bed. The hospital chief executive officer arrived with Caldwell's physician and the director of patient care. The generals sat in the hallway as though it were the most important conference room in the country. Whitmore listened while the physician reviewed Caldwell's condition. Hale held the cracked frame in both hands. Bennett sat closest to the passing carts. Mercer stood near the wall with his tablet lowered. Rebecca remained beside Emily. The chief executive officer looked at Caldwell, then toward room 417. Why was this patient moved? Mercer spoke about capacity, stability, donor relations, and operational pressure. Each phrase sounded smaller than the one before it. When he finished, Whitmore turned to Caldwell. "Sergeant Major, what would you like done?" Caldwell studied the faces around him. He could have demanded Mercer's resignation. He could have described the exposed hallway, the broken frame, and the way people had spoken around him instead of to him. Instead, he adjusted the blanket over his knees. "Put the patient who needs the room most in the room," he said. "Not the patient with the most important family." The chief executive officer nodded. "You have my word." Caldwell looked at Rebecca. "And do not make this about one nurse." Then he looked at Mercer. "Or one administrator." Mercer raised his eyes. "A system teaches people what to value," Caldwell continued. "If you punish one person and keep the same system, the next patient will end up in the same hallway." Rebecca's eyes filled, but her voice remained steady. "Mr. Caldwell, I am sorry." He held her gaze. "Then remember the next person who does not have anyone coming for him." Mercer stepped forward. "I made the decision." Caldwell waited. "I looked at your insurance, your family contacts, and the board request," Mercer said. "I never looked at you." "No," Caldwell replied. "You did not." Mercer's jaw tightened. "I am sorry." Caldwell looked toward the occupied room. "Make sure the other patient is not embarrassed for a decision he did not make." The patient's daughter stood in the doorway with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she said. Caldwell nodded once. Room 417 was returned to him before sunset after his physician confirmed the transfer was medically appropriate. The other patient received another private room based on clinical need, not family influence. Rebecca carried Caldwell's canvas bag herself. Emily placed the photograph on the windowsill inside a temporary frame. Before the generals left that evening, Whitmore stopped beside the bed. "We will return tomorrow." Caldwell closed his eyes. "You have work." "So do you," Whitmore said. "You have to get better." Caldwell opened one eye. "You finally learned to give an order." The following week, Mercy Ridge began an independent review of its bed assignment policies. No patient could be moved from a medically appropriate room for donor preference, board influence, insurance category, or visitor status. Any elderly patient admitted without family contact received an automatic patient advocate review. Veterans without emergency contacts were offered access to a military liaison. Mercer was placed on administrative leave during the investigation. Rebecca remained on duty and helped write the new patient dignity protocol. The first line of the protocol came from Caldwell. "No one becomes less important because no one powerful is watching." 3 weeks later, Caldwell left Mercy Ridge with a steadier heart and the old photograph inside a new walnut frame. Whitmore, Hale, and Bennett had visited twice. The second time, they arrived without uniforms. No stars, no aides, no government vehicles waiting beneath the entrance canopy. Just 3 aging men carrying coffee into the room of the soldier who had once carried them out of the desert. Before leaving, Whitmore paused at the door. "We should have come sooner." Caldwell looked at the 4 young faces in the photograph. "You came when it mattered." After Caldwell went home, Emily found a small card on the windowsill. His handwriting was slow but steady. "Protect their dignity before you learn their history." She kept the card inside her locker. Because some debts are not repaid with medals, speeches, or stars. They are repaid when someone refuses to leave another human being behind.